The stretch of Highway 29 between Bakersfield and Barstow has earned a reputation that makes even seasoned truckers grip their steering wheels a little tighter when darkness falls. They call it the Highway of Silence, not because of the lack of traffic, but because of what happened to those who tried to speak. Between 1987 and 1991, 7 bodies were discovered along this desolate corridor, each one bearing the same horrifying signature, their mouths sewn shut with black thread. On March 15, 1987, California Highway Patrol Officer Janet Martinez made the discovery that would haunt her for the rest of her career. While responding to reports of an abandoned vehicle near mile marker 127, she found the body of Rebecca Chen, a 23-year-old college student from UCLA, approximately 50 yards from her disabled Honda Civic. What made Martinez immediately call for backup wasn't just the obvious signs of violence, but the crude black stitching that sealed the victim's lips together. The coroner later determined that Rebecca had been alive when the thread was pulled through her flesh. The killer had used a sailmaker's needle, the kind found in marine supply stores, and had taken their time with each precise stitch. Rebecca's car had suffered a blown tire, likely caused by road debris, leaving her stranded in one of California's most isolated stretches of highway. Detective Ray Morrison of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department initially treated Rebecca's murder as an isolated incident. That changed when truck driver Miguel Santos discovered the second body on July 4, 1987. David Park, a traveling salesman, was found in identical circumstances, mouth sewn shut, body positioned precisely 30 feet from his stalled vehicle. Morrison began to see a pattern that chilled him to the bone. The killer wasn't random. They were hunting along Highway 29, targeting stranded motorists who had no choice but to trust a stranger who offered help. The forensic team discovered that both victims had defensive wounds on their hands, suggesting they had fought desperately before being overpowered. More disturbing was the realization that the stitching was done with medical precision, indicating the killer had surgical knowledge or extensive practice. The thread used in both cases was identified as waxed cotton, commonly used in leatherwork and bookbinding. As word spread through the trucking community, drivers who regularly traveled Highway 29 began coming forward with unsettling encounters. Big rig operator Tommy Diesel Jackson told investigators about a night in June 1987 when he'd spotted a figure crouched beside a broken-down sedan near mile marker 134. Something didn't feel right, Jackson recalled during his interview with Detective Morrison. The way this person was kneeling next to the car, real still-like. When my headlights hit him, they didn't even look up, just stayed there, hunched over. Jackson had slowed down but didn't stop, a decision that likely saved his life. Another trucker, Linda Vasquez, reported seeing the same sedan 3 hours later, but by then it was empty. She described noticing an unusual detail, fresh tire tracks leading away from the scene, but they belonged to a different vehicle entirely, something heavy, possibly a van or large truck. The truckers began traveling in convoys after dark, using CB radios to maintain constant contact and reporting any suspicious activity to authorities. By late 1988, with 5 confirmed victims, the task force had grown to include FBI behavioral analysts and forensic specialists from across California. Agent Sarah Kellerman noticed that all victims were found exactly 30 to 50 feet from their disabled vehicles, suggesting the killer had a specific ritual. The autopsies revealed increasingly disturbing details. Each victim had been kept alive for hours before the final stitching began. Toxicology reports showed traces of a veterinary sedative called xylazine, commonly used to tranquilize large animals. This drug would have left victims conscious but paralyzed, forced to endure their final moments in complete helplessness. The killer's technique was evolving too. Early victims showed crude stitching work, but later bodies displayed almost artistic precision, with perfectly spaced sutures that formed deliberate patterns around the mouth. Crime scene analysts theorized that the killer was perfecting their gruesome signature with each murder. The breakthrough came with victim number 6, Maria Rodriguez, found in February 1990. Beside her body, investigators discovered something that had been overlooked at previous scenes: a small antique music box partially buried in the sand. The box played Für Elise when wound, and forensics found it contained traces of the same black thread used in the murders. More chilling was the discovery of 7 additional music boxes buried at previous crime scenes, each playing the same haunting melody. The killer had been leaving these morbid trophies all along, hidden just beneath the desert surface. Inside each music box was a tiny white card with a number written in red ink, counting down from 7 to 1. The implications were terrifying. The killer had planned exactly 7 murders from the beginning, and they were nearing completion. Agent Kellerman theorized that the music boxes served as a countdown, each burial marking another step towards some twisted finale that only the killer understood. On November 3, 1991, the 7th and final victim was discovered. James Wright, an insurance adjuster from Phoenix, was found with the most elaborate stitching pattern yet, his mouth sealed in a perfect spiral that investigators later realized mimicked the shape of a musical staff. The music box found at this scene was different. Instead of Für Elise, it played a distorted, slowed-down version that sounded almost demonic in the desert silence. The card inside simply read "Finale" in the same red ink. Then, as suddenly as the murders had begun, they stopped completely. Despite the task force's intensive investigation, roadblocks, and surveillance operations, no credible suspect was ever identified. The killers seemed to have vanished as mysteriously as they had appeared, leaving behind only 7 graves and the haunting melody that still echoes in the nightmares of those who worked the case. Today, Highway 29 carries thousands of travelers each year, most unaware of the horror that once stalked this stretch of asphalt. The case remains officially open, though the task force was disbanded in 1995. Detective Morrison, now retired, still receives occasional tips and reports, but the highway killer has never resurfaced. Some investigators believe the murderer died or was imprisoned for other crimes. Others think they simply moved on to hunting grounds far from California's deserts. The music boxes were eventually returned to the victims' families, but several relatives reported that the mechanisms had mysteriously started playing on their own, usually in the dead of night. 7 memorial crosses now mark the spots where the bodies were found, and truckers still report hearing Für Elise carried on the desert wind during their late-night runs along Highway 29. The case serves as a chilling reminder that some killers are never caught, and some mysteries are never solved, leaving only questions that echo like haunting melodies across the endless miles of American highway.